Childhood neglect leaves an invisible wound that many of us carry into adulthood without even realizing it. It's not always the dramatic stories of abuse that make headlines, but rather the quiet absence of what should have been there. The missing hugs when you needed comfort, the lack of curiosity about your inner world, the feeling that your emotions were somehow too much or not worth addressing. These experiences shape us in ways that run deeper than we often understand, creating patterns in our adult lives that can feel confusing and overwhelming. When we think about neglect, we often picture extreme cases of abandonment or obvious mistreatment. But emotional neglect is much more subtle and, in many ways, more damaging because it's harder to identify and validate. It's the parent who is physically present but emotionally unavailable, perhaps lost in their own trauma or overwhelmed by life's demands. It's growing up in a household where your feelings were dismissed, minimized, or simply ignored. This type of neglect doesn't leave visible scars, but it creates a profound sense of disconnection from ourselves and others that can persist throughout our lives. The impact of childhood neglect on our developing brain is significant and lasting. During our formative years, we learn about safety, connection, and our own worth through our relationships with caregivers. When these relationships lacked attunement and responsiveness, our nervous system adapts to survive in an environment that feels unpredictable or unsafe. We develop hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats or signs of rejection. We learn to suppress our needs and emotions because expressing them didn't lead to comfort or care. These adaptations were necessary for survival then, but they often become obstacles to thriving in our adult relationships. One of the most profound effects of childhood neglect is the development of what researchers call an insecure attachment style. When our early caregivers were inconsistent, unavailable, or overwhelmed, we learned that relationships are unreliable sources of comfort and support. This creates a deep ambivalence about connection. We desperately crave intimacy and belonging, yet we fear it because past experience has taught us that getting close to others can lead to disappointment or abandonment. This internal conflict can make adult relationships feel like walking through a minefield, never quite sure when something might explode. Many adults who experience childhood neglect struggle with a persistent sense of emptiness or loneliness, even when surrounded by people. This isn't because they're ungrateful or difficult to please, but because they never learned how to truly connect with others or even with themselves. The capacity for deep intimacy requires a foundation of self-awareness and emotional regulation that develops through attuned relationships in childhood. When this foundation is missing, we might find ourselves going through the motions of connection without ever feeling truly seen or understood. The shame that accompanies childhood neglect is particularly insidious because it's often unconscious. Children naturally assume that if their needs aren't being met, it must be because they're somehow flawed or unworthy of love and attention. This core belief becomes so deeply embedded that it operates below the level of conscious awareness, influencing our choices and relationships in ways we don't fully understand. We might find ourselves attracted to partners who are emotionally unavailable, recreating the familiar dynamic of longing for someone who can't fully meet our needs.
Another common pattern that emerges from childhood neglect is perfectionism and people-pleasing behaviors. When love and attention were conditional or scarce in childhood, we learned that we had to earn our place in the world through achievement or by making others happy. We developed an overdeveloped sense of responsibility for other people's emotions while becoming disconnected from our own. This can lead to chronic anxiety, burnout, and a persistent feeling that no matter how much we accomplish, it's never quite enough. The body also holds the memory of childhood neglect in ways that can manifest as physical symptoms and chronic health conditions. When our emotional needs consistently went unmet, our nervous system remained in a state of chronic stress, always on alert for danger or abandonment. This prolonged activation of our stress response can contribute to a wide range of health issues, from digestive problems and autoimmune conditions to chronic pain and fatigue. Our bodies are trying to tell us a story about what we experienced, even when our minds have forgotten or minimized those experiences. Understanding the impact of childhood neglect isn't about blaming our parents or dwelling in victimhood. Most parents who emotionally neglect their children aren't malicious. They're often doing the best they can with their own unhealed wounds and limited resources. Many of them experienced similar neglect in their own childhoods and simply don't know how to provide the emotional attunement and responsiveness the children need. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking the cycle and creating different experiences for ourselves and future generations. The healing journey from childhood neglect often begins with learning to recognize and validate our own emotional experiences. For many of us, this is surprisingly difficult because we were never taught that our feelings mattered or deserved attention. We might find ourselves minimizing our experiences, comparing them to others who had it worse, or feeling guilty for having needs at all. This self-invalidation perpetuates the original wound and keeps us stuck in patterns that no longer serve us. One of the most challenging aspects of healing from childhood neglect is learning to trust our own perceptions and feelings. When our emotional reality was consistently dismissed or ignored in childhood, we learned to doubt ourselves and defer to others' interpretations of our experience. This can make it difficult to set boundaries, make decisions, or even know what we want in life. Rebuilding this inner compass requires patience and practice, often with the support of trusted friends, therapists, or healing communities. The process of healing also involves grieving what we didn't receive in childhood. This grief is complex because we're mourning the absence of something rather than the loss of something we actually had. We're grieving the childhood we deserved but didn't get, the unconditional love and acceptance that should have been our birthright. This grief can feel overwhelming at times, but it's a necessary part of the healing process. It's through acknowledging what we didn't receive that we can begin to provide it for ourselves.
Have you ever noticed how difficult it can be to ask for help when you need it? Do you find yourself constantly worrying about being a burden to others, even when they've offered their support? These are common experiences for those who grew up with emotional neglect, and they point to deeper questions about our sense of worth and belonging in the world. Thank you for being here and choosing to spend your time with this content. You're watching Not What It Seems, where we explore the deeper truths about human experience and healing. Every day we dive into topics that matter, offering insights that can help us understand ourselves and our relationships more clearly. If you're feeling connected to today's topic and want to contribute to our community, I'd love for you to share your experiences in the comments. Your story matters, and reading your insights always enriches our understanding of these complex topics. Learning to reparent ourselves is often a crucial part of healing from childhood neglect. This means becoming the nurturing, attuned caregiver to ourselves that we needed but didn't receive. It involves learning to recognize our own needs and feelings, to comfort ourselves when we're distressed, and to celebrate our achievements and growth. This isn't about becoming self-indulgent or narcissistic. It's about developing a healthy, loving relationship with ourselves that can serve as the foundation for all our other relationships. The concept of reparenting might sound abstract, but it shows up in very practical ways. It's choosing to speak to yourself with kindness when you make a mistake, rather than with the harsh criticism that might have been your childhood norm. It's learning to set boundaries with people who drain your energy or treat you poorly, even when it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. It's giving yourself permission to rest when you're tired, to feel your emotions without judgment, and to pursue activities and relationships that bring you joy and fulfillment. One of the most profound shifts that can occur in healing from childhood neglect is learning to trust that your needs and feelings are valid and worthy of attention. This might seem obvious, but for many of us, it's a revolutionary concept. We've spent so much of our lives minimizing our own experiences and prioritizing others' needs that the idea of putting ourselves first can feel selfish or wrong. But self-care isn't selfish. It's essential for our well-being and our ability to show up authentically in our relationships. The journey of healing from childhood neglect is rarely linear. There will be days when you feel strong and clear about your worth and your needs, and other days when old patterns of self-doubt and people-pleasing resurface with surprising intensity. This is normal and doesn't mean you're not making progress. Healing happens in spirals, not straight lines. And each time we revisit familiar challenges, we do so with more awareness and skills than we had before.
Building secure relationships as an adult who experienced childhood neglect requires courage and vulnerability. It means learning to communicate your needs clearly and directly, even when it feels scary or unfamiliar. It means choosing partners and friends who are capable of seeing and valuing your authentic self, rather than settling for relationships that recreate familiar patterns of emotional unavailability. This process can feel risky because it involves letting go of what's familiar, even when what's familiar isn't healthy or fulfilling. The ripple effects of healing from childhood neglect extend far beyond our individual lives. As we learn to recognize and meet our own needs, we become more capable of responding to others with genuine empathy and presence. We stop projecting our unmet needs into our relationships and start showing up as whole, integrated people. This transformation impacts our children, our partners, our friends, and our communities in profound ways. Many people who heal from childhood neglect discover that they have a unique capacity for compassion and understanding. Having navigated their own journey from disconnection to wholeness, they often become natural healers, teachers, or advocates for others who are struggling. This isn't about turning our pain into our purpose in a way that keeps us stuck, but rather about allowing our healed wounds to become sources of wisdom and strength that can benefit others. The relationship between childhood neglect and creativity is often overlooked but deeply significant. Many of us who grew up feeling unseen or unheard developed rich inner worlds as a way of coping with our emotional isolation. This capacity for imagination and creative expression can become a powerful tool for healing and self-discovery in adulthood. Through art, writing, music, or movement, we can explore and express the feelings that were once too dangerous or unwelcome to share. Learning to trust our intuition is another crucial aspect of healing from childhood neglect. When our emotional reality was consistently invalidated in childhood, we learned to override our inner knowing in favor of external approval or validation. Reconnecting with our intuitive wisdom requires practice and patience, but it's essential for making decisions that align with our authentic selves rather than with what we think we should want or do. The nervous system's capacity for healing and reorganization gives us hope that change is always possible, regardless of our age or how long we've been stuck in certain patterns. Through consistent practices like mindfulness, therapy, healthy relationships, and self-compassion, we can literally rewire our brains and create new neural pathways that support connection, resilience, and joy.
This isn't about positive thinking or willpower. It's about working with our biology in ways that support genuine transformation.
Understanding that healing is possible doesn't mean it's easy or quick. The patterns we developed in response to childhood neglect served important protective functions, and our psyche won't give them up without good reason. This is why healing often requires professional support, whether through therapy, support groups, or other healing modalities. We need safe relationships where we can explore our patterns, practice new ways of being, and receive the attuned care that we missed in childhood. As we near the end of our exploration today, it's important to acknowledge that recognizing the impact of childhood neglect in your life isn't about finding someone to blame or feeling sorry for yourself. It's about understanding the origins of patterns that may no longer serve you so that you can make conscious choices about how you want to live moving forward. Every moment offers an opportunity to choose differently, to respond from your authentic self rather than from old wounds and protective strategies. The path of healing from childhood neglect is ultimately a journey home to yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were hidden or suppressed in order to survive in an environment that couldn't fully see or appreciate who you were. It's about learning to trust your own feelings, to speak your truth with kindness and clarity, and to create relationships that honor your full humanity. This journey requires courage, but it leads to a life of greater authenticity, connection, and joy. Remember that you're not broken, and you don't need to be fixed. You're a human being who adapted brilliantly to challenging circumstances, and now you have the opportunity to consciously choose how you want to live and love. The neglect you experienced in childhood was never a reflection of your worth or lovability. It was a limitation of those who were supposed to care for you. You deserve to be seen, heard, valued, and loved for exactly who you are. And that recognition can begin with how you treat yourself. If this content resonated with you today, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to give it a like. Your engagement helps more people discover these important conversations about healing and growth. I'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments if you feel called to share. Your story matters and adds depth to our collective understanding of these topics. And if you'd like to continue exploring these themes with us, consider subscribing to Not What It Seems, where we dive deep into the complexities of human experience every single day. Thank you for being part of this community of seekers and healers.